All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our third in our series of 30-minute deep dives. Today's is on skill builders. So looking forward to kind of sharing and discussing skill builders with you all today. And I appreciate y'all for joining us. It looks like we've got folks from here in North Carolina, where I'm at. We've got folks from Nebraska and a few folks from, it looks like, all right, Ithaca, New York. Awesome. So happy to have folks from around the country joining us today. We'll probably have people trickle in as well as we get started. Those of you who are joining us today, you'll get a copy of our follow-up email and the slide deck. You'll get a copy of the slide deck and the recording in our follow-up email so that you can view any of this material asynchronously as you need to. Zoom basics. So obviously you have your microphone and video controls. We have a relatively small group today, so you can feel free to unmute and share when we get to question sections. If you're comfortable with it, you can share your video as well, but that's up to you. And throughout, you can feel free to share any questions or thoughts in the chat, and I'll be happy to address those when we get to our question sections. So I'm Brian Story. I'm the presenter today, and I'm our director for teacher engagement at ASSISTments. So I basically design all of our professional learning experiences for ASSISTments teachers. And prior to this work, I was a public school teacher in DC and Norfolk, Virginia for a decade. So glad to bring that passion and those experiences to the table and try to help you all out. Just a few notes on audience. Today's deep dive is kind of assuming some basic knowledge of ASSISTments. Number one, how to create an account and log into ASSISTments, and how to find and assign problems to your students, and also what the student experience looks like. I've shared a few resources here in the slide deck if you want to learn more about some of those basic elements of how to use ASSISTments. And also, I provided a link here to our news or part one webinar recording if you'd like to learn more about how the platform works. You will see some elements of these things today, but we're not going to get too deep into those basic elements. So I wanted to just start with a question and have folks share in the chat. How do you currently prefer to support students that need additional practice with a standard? And so I'll give folks about 30 seconds to a minute to share responses in the chat, and I'll elevate a few of those responses before we move on. All right, so Kelly mentioned that she provides problem sets in GoFormative. Brian mentioned that he does individual tutoring sessions with GoFormative problems as well. I'll give about 10 more seconds just to see if anybody else wants to share. All right, so they're sort of, and feel free to continue responding if you're thinking about what you want to say. So we've got some different elements that are coming up in the chat here. Problem sets and just regular problem sets or sort of individual tutoring sessions. So trying to target, say, specific material or the individual needs of a specific student. Folks like to have the ability to do that when you're trying to reinforce and give additional practice with those standards. So that's super top of mind for teachers, especially as we start to get into test prep season here shortly, if you haven't already. So our goal today is to share information about skill builders, how they can be used, and to support students as they're learning. And there are a few different contexts that they can be useful. So we'll kind of talk about those. We'll start off with what are skill builders. And then I want to be able to show you what the student experience with skill builders looks like, how and when you can use them, and we'll hear from a few different teachers who shared in our assessments community about that, and then talk about the Skill Builder report, which we have a newer version out of it. So just kind of walking through what that looks like as well before we wrap up. I want to start or kind of do a little poll here. So I'm going to launch a poll, and this the question is going to be, how familiar are you with Skill Builders in assessments? Just wanted to do a quick pulse check and see where our different knowledge levels are. So appreciate those of you who will respond to the poll, and I'll give you about 30 to 60 seconds to indicate. Oh, that was quick. All right. So it looks like of the folks here, about 40%. About 40% are pretty or somewhat familiar with Skill Builders, have assigned them at least a few times, and 60% of you don't know what Skill Builders are. So there should be something for everyone here. And of course, like I said, depending on your familiarity, you might have some questions along the way. You can feel free to ask those as well. All right, so what are Skill Builders? These are large problem sets where problems are assigned randomly to students. They're all aligned to a common core standard, and they're assigned in a way that's mastery based. So many of you may already be familiar with the student experience with assigning regular problems and assessments. Where students get multiple attempts, they get feedback, etc. That's still what happens with Skill Builders. However, the goal with a Skill Builder is that each student has to get 3 correct in a row in order to demonstrate mastery and complete the Skill Builder assignment. And so I wanted to give you a chance to sort of learn a bit about the student experience with Skill Builders, and I'm going to do a live demo of that in just a minute as well. So each student receives those problems randomly. Like I said, they have to get those or get 3 problems correct in a row on their first attempt. So if a student gets it correct eventually, they'll still get that feedback that they're correct, but it doesn't count towards mastery on a Skill Builder. And there is a 10 question per day limit, where if a student gets to 10 questions and they haven't gotten 3 correct in a row on their first attempt, the teacher will have to reset or delete progress for that student for them to try again within that 24-hour period. And the reasoning behind that is that if a student is unable to get 3 in a row within 10 questions, they probably need some sort of intervention, remediation, reteaching before attempting the Skill Builder again. I'll pause here and just see if folks have any questions or thoughts or any related challenges that they'd like to share. And thanks to those of you who are just joining us as well. Feel free to pose any questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to respond to those. Pretty straightforward information so far. All right, and I will take that to mean that everything makes sense so far. Nobody has any questions. So moving right along, how and when to use Skill Builders. So there are a few different situations in which you can use them. And I want to show you how to access them. And while I do this, I'm also going to just show you what that student experience looks like. So you can navigate to the Skill Builders folder in our content library, or you can search by standard. And if they're aligned Skill Builders, you'll see those and you can assign those to your class. So if I go over here to my assessments account, again, I can scroll down and I can go to the Skill Builders folder, select a particular grade level if I want to, and assign from there. Or I can go up here and search for a particular standard. Let's say I go with 7th grade inequalities. You'll like that, Brian, right? So I search for that. And when that standard comes up, obviously the first thing you'll see is this tab that shows we have 200 problems in our content library that align to that standard. But you can also see there is a Skill Builder. And then for the Skill Builder, you can click it. And you'll notice that you don't have the ability to select individual problems, because remember, this is one big set and students are assigned randomly. But from here, you can go ahead and assign that skill builder. Again, if you're in the content library and you want to assign a skill builder from here, you can click the grade level. In this case, I'm going to go with grade 6, ratios and proportions. And I want to do converting a percentage to a decimal. So I'm going to choose that skill builder, click assign. And you can always change the name of the assignment. For the purpose of this demo, I'm doing the assignment to Google Classroom, assigning that to my demo class. Keep in mind also, especially if you're focused on that targeted practice for maybe a subgroup or individual students, at this point, you can then select subgroups of students or an individual student to assign to. So you have the ability to send the assignment only to a small group or an individual student if you prefer. And then I'm going to click assign. It tells me that that was assigned. And then as the student, it'll let me go to my student account. Here we go. I can see that appear in my Google Classroom. It'll also appear this way in Canvas, but I'm happy to answer any Canvas specific questions if you have them. And then as a student, I'll click that and it'll take me into the skill builder. And of course, you can see I log into a lot of demo accounts. All right. So just to give you an example, let's say, I'm not quite sure on this first one. I'm still going to get that corrective feedback. And maybe I go to the teacher and say, I put in 0.3. Why isn't 0.3 showing the correct answer for 3% is a decimal? The teacher explains why that's not correct. And then I come back to it and I put in a correct answer. It tells me I'm correct, but remember, because I didn't answer on the first try, this does not count toward my 3 correct in a row. On this next question, let's say, now that I got that figured out, I know how to answer it correctly. I'll put that in. It tells me I'm correct. I'll do that again here. And again here. And so once I've gotten those 3 correct in a row, I see that button show up to finish the assignment. And it's going to send me to my report, which is similar to the regular student report you'll see for a regular assignment, where I can see the problems that I was answering, and I can see my scores as well as the average score. One note on average scores here, we are ultimately going to allow teachers to remove this column. So that's something we're working on, so that you can choose to not show students average scores on assignments if you prefer. And then when I go back to my teacher account, I can view the data report, but we'll come back to that in just a minute. So there are a few different situations in which you might want to use skill builders. The first one is just extra practice to build student fluency. And so to illustrate, sort of give an example of this, I wanted to share one of our expert teachers, Wanda McLaurin, who is from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And she talks about how she uses skill builders to build concept fluency among students.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wanda McLaurin, and I am a 7th grade math teacher coming to you from Fayetteville, North Carolina. And this past summer, I have spent the last 6 weeks teaching summer school to grade 6 and grade 7 middle school students. One of the things that I used this summer to help me stay organized was I created a Skill Builders checklist. Skill Builders is definitely one of the things that I absolutely love from the ASSISTments website, as it really is a short, quick assignment that I can assign to my students to essentially build their skills, practice their skills, and build their fluency. So I did that for my students, and I printed a copy for each one and organized it by the domain of which we use our Open Up resources. For the students, I printed a copy for each student, and when they completed a skill builder that I assigned to them, they checked here and then indicated the time that they spent on the assignment and the date that they completed it. One thing that I love about the Skill Builders is I can also differentiate. My district uses Canvas as our learning management system. So I can go in and assign to which students I want to complete which skills and at what time. I absolutely love Skill Builders. Along with the Skill Builders, I also have my students complete a Skill Builder reflection sheet. This right here is a link to a document that is posted to their homepage of their Canvas. And so when they click the link, it automatically makes a copy for them. And I always encourage my students to complete when they're answering questions, to complete them in complete sentences. And reflection is a really big, important thing that I try to use in my classroom to reinforce the skills that we're learning. And I'm constantly reflecting, so I want my students to be constantly reflecting on their learning as well. So there's 5 short questions that my students answer after each skill builder that they complete. The first one, again, is how much time did you spend on your skill builder? What skill did you practice today? Why is the skill important? Describe a mistake you made and what you learned from it. And then the last question is my favorite. I ask them to create their own problems similar to what they practice in their skill builder, and then explain the steps that you take to solve the problem that you created. After I have my students do that, I'm able to build my own bank of questions that I can then use to create exit tickets, warm-up questions, homework problems. So I love having my students create their own problems, and they love when they get to see their problems show up in something that we're learning in class. ASSISTments has been a game changer in my classroom as I'm using the data that from the score reports to drive my instruction daily. So we use ASSISTments for warm-ups, our practice problems, and our skill builders. I hope that this is something that becomes helpful for you, as it's becoming an awesome practice in my classroom.
So that was Elwanda, and sort of talking about how she uses skill builders, obviously giving those examples of materials she's created in class to support the effective usage of skill builders. And I also want to call out one other element that she sort of mentions there, but I want to make sure it's super clear that she's assigning skill builders based on the data that she's getting directly from students, right? So it might be that she assigns an exit ticket and she identifies a student need for assigning a skill builder for the next day. It might be the warm-up identifies a standard that's in need of some additional practice to build concept fluency among students. So she's not just assigning random skill builders to see what students know. It's based on the actual assignment report data that she's getting from ASSISTments for her other assignments. The next purpose for skill builders would be after remedial and or differentiated instruction to show student growth on a concept. We definitely don't recommend that if students are struggling, that you just assign a skill builder to get them to not struggle. Because the skill builder questions can be, a bit more difficult. And so if a student hasn't, gotten that extra help or that additional remediation on a topic before trying a skill builder, it might just increase frustration. So you want to make sure that students are getting the instruction they need prior to assigning the skill builder. And to sort of illustrate for a teacher who uses skill builders for this purpose, I wanted to share a little clip from another teacher, Megan Randolph, who teaches in Yuma, Arizona, grades 7 and 8, and how she uses skill builders to support differentiation.
So now it's able to meet my needs and I don't have to pay a thing because ASSISTments is free. So I use the skill builders a lot more than I do the curriculum piece. The cool downs go great with our lessons, but we do a lot more hands-on in class. And so now that we're face-to-face, I'm back to doing the hands-on approach. But with the skill builders, it is giving me that chance to be able to meet the needs of my kids. So the first way that I do it is I will assign it to the entire class. And then through Google Classroom, I go in and I remove the kids who no longer need it. And so I'm targeting specific standards for these kids. I always start, since I teach 7th grade math, I start with the 5th grade standards actually, because Arizona standards start everything in 6th and 7th grade with fractions and decimals. And that is where, as a 7th grade math team, we feel that our kids struggle the most. So I start, and I've actually started to build them on graph paper the other day. Brian kind of inspired me to think a little bit more about this. So I'm gamifying it. So I am taking the skill builders and I'm building them into levels based upon the standard types. And I'm starting with 5th grade fractions. And from there, they'll go to 5th grade, like order of operations and place value. And then they move into 6th grade standards. And each sub category of our standards is a new level. And so the kids are trying to work through each skill builder to get to the next one, and they don't get the next one until they've mastered this one, which means that they're going to have to get those 3 in a row. They're going to have to meet with me. Now, I'm fortunate I get the kids, we kind of do a block scheduling with math and ELA on our campus. So I get the kids for 110 minutes 4 days a week, and our 5th day is an early out day, so I only get them for about maybe an hour and 10 minutes if we're lucky. And so during that second math block is when I get to do kind of a rotations and a stations, and so they'll do skill builders as one of those pieces.
All right. So like I said, just wanted to give folks another example in this case of Megan, how she uses skill builders to support differentiation. 2 other ways that teachers commonly like to use skill builders are to demonstrate mastery after students have mastered a concept. So let's say you're finishing up a concept, you're about to go into test review, and you really want to make sure every student has mastered the core standards that are going to be on that assessment. So skill builders are great to do that. And then test prep or review targeted at high leverage standards. So let's say you have a particular standard where students have kind of struggled with it throughout the year. You want to make sure that that you're doing some reteaching during test prep and giving them a chance to really demonstrate their mastery before that that big end of year test or that standardized test. Skill builders are great for those as well. Given that these 4 different sort of use cases, I wanted to give you all a poll on how would you most like to use skill builders. And this can reflect what you currently do. For those of you, the majority of you who haven't tried skill builders, it could be reflective of, based on what we just talked about, what you'd like to try. And so I'm going to go ahead and launch this second poll question. And I'll give folks about 30 seconds or so to respond. All right, excellent. You are quick poll responders. Usually I have to give a full minute to let everybody respond. Just to kind of share the results here, it looks like almost half of folks want to use it as extra practice to build student fluency, which is great. Again, definitely recommend doing some kind of brief reteaching or coverage of the concept prior to giving students that extra practice. It looks like 3 of you chose after students have mastered a concept to demonstrate mastery. And then 1 each for after remediation to show student growth, and for test prep targeted at high leverage standards. So it sounds like people, and we recommend it, use it however it's most useful, or use skill builders however they're most useful for you and your students. Let's see. I was curious if anybody who's already using skill builders in this particular way would care to share out an example of how they're doing this now. So I'll give folks a chance to sort of share their thoughts on that. And this is also a great place for folks, if you have questions, you can unmute and share questions aloud, or you can share a question in the chat. For those of you who have more experience with skill builders, if you have a particular nagging question or something that you're curious about that you'd like to hear about, now's a great time to share those in the chat as well.
I currently use skill builders, I would say maybe a third of the time. and I use them. I would say I use the practice regularly as like a collaborative effort in my classroom. And then I use the skill builder when I feel like it's a good independent check to sort of gather whether or not they had basically mastered the skill, as I mentioned in the poll.
Excellent. Thank you, Dana. We have a couple more seconds here if anybody else would like to share. And again, if there are any questions, happy to answer those as well at this time. All right, well, do want to make sure we end on time, so we'll go ahead and get to the next piece here, which is the Skill Builder report. Our Skill Builder report does look somewhat different, so you may or may not be more familiar with this format. It's different from the regular assignment report in that obviously you can see that it looks somewhat different. You still have those progress cards at the top, so you can see which students haven't started or are in progress or have completed. Each chip shows how students did on each question they received in the Skill Builder. And you also can see the total amount of time spent and hide any of these columns if you'd like to share data with students. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you live what one of these reports looks like. I already have one pulled up. So you can see each student, you can see their progress. If you want to dig in a little bit deeper and see, we're going to be adding student details to this, but we haven't quite added it yet. If a student, let's say we have student N and they got through all 10 problems and you did some reteaching, you can click that triple dot next to their name and delete student progress. And then, student details are available. You can click the student's name and you can see every action that they took, similar to what you can see in a regular assignment report. Alrighty. And I'll leave this up actually. Does anybody have any questions about the Skill Builder report or any of the ways that it's structured, anything like that before we move on? Any questions about the Skill Builder report?
Is this where you, like, if you wanted them to like redo the same skill builder, is this where you would kind of like delete their previous attempt?
That's right.
Okay.
So if you've already assigned the skill builder to them, they've tried it, but they got to that 10 question maximum, and you go ahead and do some kind of intervention, you want them to try again, all you have to do is go to their name, click the triple dot, and click delete progress. They can click the same assignment and the same link in your LMS, and it'll start them back at the beginning with another random question. It's typically highly unlikely that the same student is going to receive the same questions as well, which is great because then you don't have that issue of students remembering, the correct answer or anything like that. Any other questions I can answer about the report?
Brian,
Once you,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, once you delete the progress, are you able to see it again or not? Like, would you be able to show growth between one and the other?
That's a great question, actually. No, currently, once you delete progress, that record is gone. I actually think that that's a super interesting idea. And I think that if you share that with contact at ASSISTments, we can bring that up with our product team to see if there's some future development possibilities there. So it does not currently show growth for one student on the same skill builder with multiple attempts. But that's a great question. Thank you so much.
And that's actually what I believe I feel like this has happened quite a few times in my classroom. I think the kids who go through 10 times and get shut down, if they go back in 24 hours, they can then redo the assignment. You don't have to reassign to them. And then you get to see what they did both times. So you don't lose that data. It would only be like if someone did pass, but maybe didn't pass as well as you would like, and you wanted to delete and then go in and reassign. But I think someone who keeps failing and then you reteach, it should still be there for them as long as you didn't I don't know, put a deadline on it or something. Because I have kids who take it numerous times until they pass it.
And you're saying, and you were saying you see each set of it, each time you reset it, you still see the data from the previous attempts?
Right. I can see the iterations of each time they went through and because that's what allows me to be like, okay, I really need to sit down with that student. Like they went through and they did it on Monday. It didn't go well. I asked them to try again. They did it on Tuesday. It's still not going well. I sat down with them and then asked them to go ahead and do it on Wednesday. I at no point am reassigning anything. It's just every 24 hours they can go again.
Yeah, well, that piece, absolutely, yes. So if you leave it as is, it will refresh for that student once they reach that 10 question limit. It'll refresh within 24 hours. So you could make your skill builder structure designed around that. Or you could, if you want to reteach right there in class and give them another attempt, you can delete progress. So yes, absolutely. All right, so we're getting short on time. I do want to give folks a chance to pose any final questions. So as we wrap up here, you can do that. And then I would like folks to just share in the chat as we wrap up. How do you think skill builders can add the most value in your instruction? And I appreciate folks just sharing their thoughts in the chat. And while you're doing that, I am also going to, and I apologize, I have to show my screen here a little bit because I'm not working on my double monitors right now. I'm about to move. I'm going to post in the chat our feedback survey. And I really appreciate anybody who's willing to just take 30 seconds and fill out that survey. Kathy shared that it'll have the most value in terms of providing additional review for students. And I know sometimes it can be difficult to find new problem banks to give students for that extra review, right? So this can help solve that issue. And then Kelly shared that it'll provide additional data to drive adaptive instruction. It's so hard sometimes to get that kind of in the moment data. Obviously, there are different platforms you can get that that sort of data from. So we're another tool in your toolkit to give you that quick data that you can use to adapt your instruction. Absolutely, thank you, Kelly. And then it looks like Denise shared help with individually differentiating for 4th grade IEP students. Absolutely. And especially now that we have that feature that allows you to assign to a subset of a class. All right, and I realize we're over time. So again, we appreciate those of you filling out the feedback survey. For those of you who are still here, you can definitely come and check out our next 30-minute deep dive, which is the standards report. And then you can check out our website for various resources and help. Just to go live there for a second, on our main page, you can go to the Help Center and go to User Resources to access any of the information on how to use our platform. For getting started, if you click there, you can see we have a variety of resources to help you get started, but we also have several other topics like how to find content, reports and data, etc. So definitely check that out by clicking Help Center and User Resources. And you can also view any webinar recordings at our webinar library or sign up for a future session at the webinar sign up. And with that, feel free to join our Facebook teacher user community. Check us out on Twitter, and you can always reach out to us at contact@assistments.org, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And then thank you, Dare, and I hope I'm not pronouncing your name incorrectly. Feel free to correct me if I am. That Skill Builders gives them a way to make sure students don't forget the standards they've mastered. So getting that additional practice with standards maybe you covered at the beginning of the year to make sure those concepts are still fresh for students. So that's a great use case, absolutely. And I want to thank everybody for joining today. Apologies for going over. And again, I'll stay on for a few seconds to see if folks have questions, but that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Brian. Good luck on your move.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate that. And be in touch if you ever have any questions or you want to discuss anything or just catch up, reach out and I'd be happy to talk.
Okay, great. I will. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.